Since the massive destruction caused by Hurricane Helene, the news cycle has been peppered with questions about FEMA's ability to properly respond to disasters and the looming threat of a funding issue. But of course, it's an election year, and a politician's first responsibility is to make sure they win elections. Even the best-intentioned politicians have a responsibility to get elected. Nothing on their agenda matters if they're not the one in office, so with that understanding, some degree of politicking is natural and necessary. But in times of crisis, it's best to put partisan politics aside and focus on the task at hand. So what really happened here between Kamala Harris and Governor DeSantis? Well, on Monday, reports started to come out that Ron DeSantis was refusing to take calls from the Harris team, and when Kamala was asked about it, her response implied that DeSantis was putting politics ahead of doing his job.
NBC is reporting Governor DeSantis is ignoring your calls on hurricanes, resources, and help. How does that hurt the situation here?
You know, moments of crisis, if nothing else, should really be the moment that anyone who calls themselves a leader says they're going to put politics aside and put the people first. People are in desperate need of support right now, and playing political games at this moment in these crisis situations, these are the height of emergency situations, is just utterly irresponsible, and it is selfish, and it is about political gamesmanship instead of doing the job that you took an oath to do, which is to put the people first.
This question also came up in Monday's White House press briefing, where Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre seemed to imply that DeSantis was dodging calls from President Biden as well.
We're learning that DeSantis refused to take a call from Vice President Harris, specifically around Hurricane Milton. Can you just talk about that and any communication around this new hurricane?
Look, that is something for the governor to speak to himself. If you have the president and you have the vice president reaching out to offer up assistance provided to your constituents, the people who live in your state, to make sure we are doing everything that we need to do from a federal response, and we're reaching out, offering our support. That's for the governor. The governor is up to him if he wants to respond to us or not.
This sounds terrible. You're telling me that Ron DeSantis would rather let the people of his state suffer than to agree to work with the Biden-Harris administration to get the aid they need? Well, not quite. When asked about it, this is what he had to say.
That you turned down calls from both Biden and Harris. Are you saying you're not aware of that? And if so, how are you not aware of that?
So Biden called me a couple days ago with Helene when I was on the helicopter. I didn't have any issues. They had helped us with what we've done. I'm not aware that he's tried to call since then. Certainly hasn't called my phone, so I don't know quite where they're getting that information. At the same time, we got the approvals that we need. If there's something else that we need, I'll hop on the phone very quickly, whether that's the FEMA administrator or the president, and we will press the case to be able to get approvals for what we need in Florida. But we have gotten approvals for everything that we've asked for.
Code in this area?
NBC story is false as far as Harris and you go.
I didn't know that she had called, so I'm not sure who they called. They didn't call me, and their characterization of it was something that they did. It wasn't anything that anybody in my office did in terms of saying that it was political.
Well, that certainly adds some more context to the situation, doesn't it? Again, the implication of Harris's claim is that DeSantis is playing political games instead of preparing his state for an impending natural disaster. But in his response, DeSantis doesn't seem to have a problem disclosing the fact that he's been in contact with Joe Biden and has already secured the resources Florida needs to respond to Hurricane Milton. Additionally, he has direct lines of communication to the president and FEMA director if he should require any more assistance. But is that the truth, or is DeSantis just trying to cover up his political games? I guess we could see what President Biden has to say about all this.
The governor of Florida has been cooperative. He said he's gotten all that he needs. I talked to him again yesterday, and I said, no, you're doing a great job. It's all being done well. We thank you for it. And I literally gave my personal phone number to call. So I don't know. There was a rough start in some places, but every governor from Florida to North Carolina has been fully cooperative and supportive and acknowledged what this team is doing. And they're doing an incredible job. But we got a lot more to do.
Okay, so even Biden, who has every incentive to try and help Kamala come out of this looking good, seems to agree that DeSantis has been working cooperatively with the federal government to respond to these hurricanes. Look, to me this all sounds like stupid schoolyard behavior. If Harris did reach out to DeSantis and he ignored her, why is she bringing attention to it? According to NBC News, a DeSantis aide did say that Harris's team reached out and that DeSantis' office didn't respond because the calls, quote, seemed political. Maybe his team didn't tell him about the calls, but if he was being petty and dodging the calls, the smartest thing for Harris to do is just not to bring it up. She isn't running against DeSantis, and bringing focus to this drama handed him the opportunity to make her look bad.
She has no role in this. In fact, she's been vice president for 3.5 years. I've dealt with a number of storms under this administration. She has never contributed anything to any of these efforts. And so what I think is selfish is her trying to blunder into this. No. And here's the thing. Has she ever called before? She has no role. No, she has no role in this process. I'm in contact with the President of the United States. I'm in contact with FEMA director. I'm obviously managing all our state agencies. We're supporting all our local government. And I will say this. I've had storms under both President Trump and President Biden, and I've worked well with both of them. She's the first one who's trying to politicize the storm, and she's doing that just because of her campaign. She's trying to get some type of an edge. She knows she's doing poorly, and so she's playing these political games. I don't have time for political games. I've got people whose lives are on the line. I've got people whose homes and their possessions are on the line, and we are focused 100% on that mission. I'm not worried about playing her political games. And so she is being selfish by trying to blunder into this when we're working just fine.
Now, isn't that a clippable moment? For 4 years, she hasn't been the one to reach out about hurricanes, so why is she doing it now? The obvious conclusion that everyone's going to jump to is that these massive hurricanes showed up a few weeks before the election, so she wants to look presidential and take credit for all the federal response and aid sent to the victims of these storms. But let's take a step back and be a little bit charitable to Kamala for just one moment. The good faith answer to that question is that maybe she was genuinely concerned. This appeared to be a uniquely intense situation that had the potential to cause huge historic destruction in Florida. That might have been her reason to reach out to DeSantis. That being said, it's also undeniable that if Florida had a Harris-supporting governor who could give her the opportunity to take credit for leading all the recovery efforts, I think that would be a monumental political benefit to her. But the main priority of Florida's governor, whether it's Ron DeSantis or a Democrat, is preparing the state for a potential Category 5 hurricane. At the time that all of this was going down, the storm was less than 48 hours away from making landfall, so even a Harris-friendly governor might not have had the time to take her phone call. Let's also take a second to look at this from DeSantis' point of view. He's already had one destructive hurricane hit his state less than 2 weeks ago. There have been reports that this next hurricane has the potential to be even more destructive, so he's dealing with that. He's already coordinated with the president and FEMA to secure the resources he needs, and for this hypothetical, let's even assume he's fully aware that Harris herself is calling him. What reason would she be reaching out other than to win some political points by offering support to a Republican governor? Keep in mind, Ron DeSantis ran against Trump in the Republican primary, so he's already on thin ice with the ride-or-die Trump supporters. If it's even perceived that he supported Kamala Harris's campaign, there's no way in hell he's getting reelected in Florida, even if she loses in November. Understand that from DeSantis' point of view, there is absolutely no benefit to taking that call. He's already secured the aid he needs. It can only hurt him. So whether he knew about it and decided to ignore her, or his team made that decision for him, it should be obvious to anyone who understands the context of the situation that this would be the outcome. In my opinion, the whole thing was a disastrous miscalculation by the Harris campaign for a couple of reasons. One, the Harris team should know that DeSantis would ignore them or respond negatively, and picking a fight with him distracts from the focus that should be on Donald Trump anyway. And two, if she's asked to comment on it, at least prepare a response that still accomplishes her political goals. The politically smart response to, "We heard DeSantis is ignoring your calls," would be something like, "We did reach out to offer our help, and we haven't heard back from him yet, but I know that Ron's dealing with a lot right now preparing for the storm. I've already talked with Joe Biden, and our administration stands with the people of Florida because this disaster doesn't see Democrats or Republicans. We're united in a common goal of keeping Americans safe." That was basically the response Biden gave to the press. Even in his old age, he still had enough political awareness to give what I would call a very presidential response. But instead, Kamala comes across as playing political games and trying to insert herself into a crisis to score political points, even if that wasn't her intention. Based on the information we have about the whole situation, I find it interesting that this little spat even happened. I think anyone who followed this story honestly without a partisan bias would agree that this ended up making Kamala look petty and incompetent. But keep a few things in mind. There are a lot of people who will agree with everything I've said in this video and who will still claim that Kamala Harris has been running the country for the past 4 years. We aren't living under the Harris administration yet, and if Kamala keeps stepping on rakes the way she has been, I don't think we will be anytime soon. But hey, that's just my opinion. What do I know? I'm just a guy on the internet. Do you think it was a mistake for Harris to pick a fight with DeSantis over an ignored phone call? Or do you think DeSantis should have just taken the call? Put whatever you think down in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, give it a like. Subscribe for more, and until next time, stay mid.